All right, everyone, welcome to our first This Week in Crypto of September here, September 1st, 2023. We're down to our final third of 2023. Boy, how time has flown here in a topsy-turvy year so far. It may not seem like it, but Bitcoin's still up over 50%, about 57% to be exact, since the start of the year. But as of lately, it certainly doesn't feel that way because August was another down month, just like July was. And we're going to get into a lot of details regarding how things are going to look the rest of the year based on the health of Bitcoin's network and other networks, what stable coins are doing, how the Grayscale highs and lows have kind of impacted crypto and changed sentiment. Lots to touch on, but we can start just by looking at a few price returns as we like to do at the beginning of the call. And we're seeing mostly down swings as you would expect over the past week. It was up back on what Monday it was. We saw a plus 7% rise in Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash had this huge upswing of over 20%. And then gradually we just watched these projects start to lose their market cap, and it was becoming very apparent that it was a kind of a buy the rumor, sell the news sort of situation where everyone got excited about Grayscale's victory over the SEC. But it was still all speculative at the end of the day. That ETF still isn't in its full-fledged release yet. And because it's all just sort of rumors about when it's going to be released, everyone bought based on just the increased exposure that Grayscale and potentially future ETFs would bring to crypto, which is undoubtedly a good thing. But at the same time, you have to be a little bit weary of the fact that nothing is definitive yet. And this is all just a ruling to allow Grayscale and others to seek the possibilities of ETFs, which I'm sure they will. But we saw that after that euphoric spike, prices really settled down in a hurry. There are a few exceptions over the past week. Obviously, Toncoin, for those of you following this asset, it's really been climbing the market cap ranks, and it's now actually in the top 20 market caps after a plus 25% week. So if you've been on that train for a while, congratulations. We can see that Bitcoin Cash still up plus 8.5%. Maker had a big week, and we touched on Maker a little bit just recently on our Twitter, and I wanted to show how there was a ton of shark and whale accumulation going on, especially since the beginning of July. And we can see that 61.5K Maker, which is somewhere around, I think, $60+ million worth of Maker, was accumulated by these key sharks and whales since the beginning of July. And that was kind of a telling sign that prices could be moving back up, and maybe it's still early, but you can see that there has definitely been a correlation between these three lines and when prices start to rise after they begin to accumulate. So that was very interesting to see with Maker. And then, we've got Sinfin that's still kind of going ahead of the markets if you've been keeping an eye on that one. XDC network, Hex is finally showing a little bit of recovery after its bloodbath over the past few months. But yeah, overall, a continued downswing for most of crypto right now. And it doesn't look as though, that bleeding has fully come to an end, because as of right now, we're still seeing dips in prices, and we're going to try to jump into some of the on-chain metrics here soon to look at when there could be a reversal. Going back to our Twitter thread for a moment, I wanted to show you a little more about the Grayscale situation. If you guys haven't read this insight yet, I highly recommend it. We put a little short article together regarding some of the speculation, the emotions related to the Grayscale announcement. Obviously, the social volume for Grayscale took off immediately as prices began to spike. So this was the crowd discovery spike. There was an immediate downswing, not big though. And then we had one more upswing as people were talking about it less and less throughout that same day. And gradually it just came back down. And you can even look at the buy versus sell reaction, where it was very, very high on Telegram, and kind of neutral on the rest. Slight uptick on Reddit, maybe a slight uptick on 4chan. But for the most part, the platform that is most known for shilling and very emotional trading, anytime a news story comes out, they're the ones that really kind of had the hype train going, and they were sort of punished as prices retraced in a hurry ever since. So yeah, check that out. And we also posted on Twitter right here. Check this out, guys. So there was the largest single day accumulation of the summer, just the day right before the announcement that Grayscale won their SEC lawsuit. So it looks to be almost a certainty that the powers that be had a little idea that this announcement would come down, accumulated quite a bit more, and then watched the price surge. Now, obviously, they didn't really drop since, and it's kind of a wash at this point. But even still, 14,596 Bitcoin being added to these wallets that hold 10 to 10K, that's a pretty significant amount. And that amounts to 388.3 million. We did the math. So pretty much just an example of what you often see in crypto, which is a lot of anonymous people getting a head start on what is to be a likely rally. And the rally did indeed happen. It was just very short-lived. Some other things, it's interesting because we had this big dip here back on August 18th. This was about 2 weeks ago. Prices kind of stayed down despite all of the dip buy calls that were going on. That's normal, right? Because if the crowd unanimously is starting to believe that it's time to buy the dip, that usually means this is not yet the dip to buy. Prices stayed down. We had this upswing over the Grayscale situation, and then, as you can see, came right back down to the same level. But this time, no real dip buy calls. And that's interesting. Obviously, it's not the sizable dip that we saw 2 weeks ago, but this is still a dip. And it kind of just appears as though people did not really see this as the opportunity that the time 2 weeks ago was. And the reason that's significant is because it raises the probability of us actually seeing a rise heading into the weekend due to the lack of optimism that's currently going on. It does appear, based on social media and a lot of sources that we've read, that there's some doubt, a lot of fear, and assumptions that this was all just one big bull trap and it's the end of it, and now we're going to resume kind of this same downswing that we've been seeing for a couple of months now, ever since late June. So if that's the narrative going on, we should actually be a little more optimistic about the possibility of prices rallying at least a little bit here in September. Of course, this is just the social sentiment, and we'll look at the on-chain situation in just a moment. But yeah, I thought that was worth pointing out. A few other stories on Twitter. Obviously, there was a huge volume spike right here, and that has come down, but you can see the impact of the Grayscale announcement just a couple days ago. And this, one of our friends of the company pointed out that the volume could also be high due to the transfers from Bybit to new addresses. I think that's very plausible as a realistic explanation. Also, take a look at Bitcoin Cash. Obviously, it's a polarizing asset that a lot of people either love or hate. I see a lot more hate toward it than love. It's not really our place to say what people should or should not invest in, but you can't deny how much Bitcoin Cash really took off as the ETF announcements were coming down. And that was the same thing that initially pushed it up to this crazy height, going from below $100 all the way up to above 300. So it 3x'd during that time when the Grayscale and other ETFs were first being announced, and then it had spent the last couple of months dropping until this new life was injected right back into it after Grayscale won its lawsuit. So you can see the MVRV actually went back into the positives for the first time since we saw the big jump over when the ETFs were first announced. That said, that was showing kind of that there was potentially a good sell opportunity, and that would have played out well if you saw this MVRV signal and at least took some of your profits if you're in Bitcoin Cash. Also, something we noted a couple days ago is the fact that Ethereum's ratio of on-chain transaction and volume in profit to loss was way negative, and we're going to check on how this looks today compared to a couple days ago. But this is a sign that Ethereum may be starting to get a little ignored and undervalued due to all of the sell-offs that are going on while the addresses are underwater. So people are selling at a lower price than when those coins entered their wallets, and that's typically a sign that coins can start to turn around and bounce. Touched on Maker there. Take a look at this Chainlink signal, and this actually was great timing for us because we actually saw Chainlink begin to show some mild decoupling from the rest of the markets within an hour after this post. We certainly don't think we caused it or anything. I don't think we have that kind of pull, but I do think that we had identified what has been a familiar pattern over the past few years for Chainlink, which is a big drop in exchanges, in exchange supply when it comes to the overall supply of Chainlink. It often leads to an inevitable bounce almost immediately after. We saw it there, we saw it there, and more recently at the end of 2022, even more recently at the beginning of June, and then we just saw another one that happened just a couple days ago, and prices immediately kind of climbed back up. It was certainly not a significant rise, but Chainlink is kind of leading the pack a little bit over the past 12 hours or so, and it might be worth keeping an eye on if you're a fan of the ERC20 asset. And then lastly, I want to point out that we just had our monthly report come out where we talked about all sorts of things related to the Grayscale win. We talked about, the big jump and fall right back to where we started after all of the emotions died down from it. We talked about the bleeding. I mean, these were big drops in August. Bitcoin only dropped about, I think, 13%, but most altcoins out there dropped significantly more. So it has not been a great time to be in altcoins. But there is so much FUD toward altcoins right now that there could be some arguments for a rise coming up here in September, assuming Bitcoin starts to stabilize out. Also take a look at the social frequency of the word Bulltrap, or bull and trap with a space in between. Interestingly, I mean, the crowd typically gets it wrong, but you can see anytime there's this big upswing and there's a lot of commentary related to there being a bull trap, they're actually correct right here, right here, right here, and right here. There's just a drop almost immediately after those social mentions spike. So we talk a little bit about how that might be a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is essentially, traders are so jaded by the last year and a half or so, almost 2 years now, that anytime there's a rise, there's no enthusiasm and no FOMO coming in. I mean, obviously there is FOMO, but not long lasting enough FOMO to really start to break these cycles of a quick jump followed by a long gradual drop. So that's interesting to see as well. We mentioned meme coins at the beginning of, or at the intro to this call when we made the announcements. And, I do want to touch on the fact that our hilariously named friend Sonic Obama, well, I got to make sure to get it right. One moment. I always get it mixed up. Harry, yeah, there we go. Harry Potter Obama Sonic 10 Inu. It had a heck of a run in August, at least the first 3 weeks of it. If I can find it, there we go. So yeah, look at how social volume just gradually climbed as more and more people discovered. And this final social volume spike here, just about 3 days ago, this is when everything was rising. This may have marked the top. We aren't going to make any proclamations one way or another, but you can see how there was a big local top here as social volume got really high and the mainstream was discussing and discovering it.
This time it was especially, this time it was especially as I remember Bitcoin was trending among top trending topics.
Right.
And expectation was, it was fueled by expectation of now we can go only up after approval of, or let's say, win in SEC court. Or not win, but this news that SEC can lost.
Well, I was going to say, I think that they're sort of like how Bitcoin Cash entered the scene 5-6 years ago, where they were kind of they had a key handle that was under the Bitcoin name, and a lot of people didn't know whether they were buying Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. It's funny to say, but there are a lot of novice traders who are almost definitely being duped by the fact that the ticker for Obama Sonic is Bitcoin, right? It was clever by whoever created it. And I guarantee that when, ETF news comes down and Bitcoin starts to trend, there are some people who look up Bitcoin, the ticker, and they go, oh, okay, I'll buy this. And they don't realize they're buying Harry Potter Obama. And that's for sure fueled some of their market cap growth over this past month. So yeah, let's jump into some of the other metrics. And Maksim, it's great to have you here. I'd love to hear, maybe to start, some of your takes about the last week, especially everything with the Grayscale stuff as it's gone down.
I will put in a different perspective. First, actually, I did not. I was not sure I will be able to make it today, but last week kind of promised there was discussion about some Elliot waves patterns, and say, okay, I will show up, but it will be a quite limited time I can spend, as I need to go and finish a few things. Soon we travel to the stock in 2049. It's quite a lot of things to do. And when looking at Elliot waves, I will explain a few things. It will be easier. Not easier, but it will make it more fluid story. Let me just switch.
You can send a link, and I'm happy to open it on my side too.
You don't have setting on, I think. Let me try. Okay,
sure.
I don't use so often Skype for sharing. So desktop, if
I see in the bottom right screen.
Yeah. I see it. Okay, now I need probably this one if I share. Let's see. What do you say?
Looks good.
Yeah. Is it now some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lines and all this stuff?
Yep, I see it.
Okay, good. I think we discussed it in last week. I said that by observing the maker, we can see the story of crypto market in a sense. And what I will show here is final results. Research was done to big part on the Sun-base using some specific metrics which we utilized to identify what could be the top. So, okay, was it fifth waves, or what was the middle explosion? Was it the three waves? Yeah, it's not, of course, on TradingView. But if I will start explaining everything or showing both Sun-base and TradingView, will be complicated, will jump, and will be confusing. Yeah, and unfortunately, Sun-base would never wanted, or I never wanted to be replacement for TradingView. Things like what you see on the screen is very good on TradingView. drawing the lines and this retracement and everything, extensions, perfect. We don't do, or we don't try spend our resources to reduce the same, but there are metrics. Yeah, there've been plenty of social and on-chain metrics used on Sunbase to come to this conclusions. So it's one, and second, of course, it can be wrong. Yeah, it's just a working assumption for the moment. And in this world, with these working assumptions, Maker did quite nicely run up in 5 ways. It means it's setting up the stage to continue it. Yeah, this is the basic rule of, or let's say, idea of Elliot. You see 5, you say, okay, cool. There is a good chance it will get followed again. Now, it can be that we will continue from the level which was around slightly below 1,000. But typically, I would expect a second, yeah, more dramatic to 900 plus minus. So that's why you see we had A, we now went to B, and one more dive, and then it will continue up. It does correspond. It's a part of the whole history where we've been analyzing Ethereum, Bitcoin. That was more complicated, and believe me, build a structure for Ethereum or Ethereum, this was very complex. And we're not like super confident. It by itself maybe not a bad sign. When you're super confident, it's most of the time doesn't work. But we assume there was a 5 up, and if even quite unusual one from the last lows. It was when is it? Like November 2022 in Bitcoin Ethereum. So we've built eventually 5 up, and now we're kind of finishing a correction. We don't like that the current sentiment is very positive, and this spike which we were discussing in the beginning, where Bitcoin, Ethereum last week or now this week, 3 days ago, grew on within an accord, and Bitcoin, Ethereum now will go up, and immediately all media turns positive, and they stay either neutral or quite positive. Or if you read for Telegram channels, or if you read as an analytic platform, most of posts, or let's say most of the metrics are showing kind of with positive bias. We don't like it. It's typically the end of correction looks different. Yeah, there is much more concern, and or they stay quiet for a long enough time. So we would prefer we go lower. Yeah, so you should embrace the possibility we will go lower before we go higher. And this lower in Bitcoin, ideally, it will break this low at 25,000. It's how I learned crypto market likes. You see, when there was a top at around 30, 31, we break it one time, we break it a second time, and then we reverse all the way down, just when everyone gets convinced. So ideal situation, everyone gets convinced it's only the way down from here. Then we turn around. Then we can come out from contrarian point of view, from behavior analytics. You can come out and make a difficult. It will not feel confident, or it will not feel comfortable, but you can come out with a strong case. Okay, we can go up. Yeah, it's not to say it can go up from here, but it's for me, I'm not going to bet any substantial amount. Ideally, it will go below 25K, maybe 23, 23.5. Everyone convinced, okay, this is the way down now. No good news, or whatever good news we had did not work. And then we can turn around. And it fits in the terms, it makes the whole story. Making new low, Bitcoin new low, Ethereum new low, I mean, relatively low, not ultimate new low. And if in this time, it's probably 1 week around, I don't know how long time it may take, we have finally, or flip side on CoinDesk, I don't know, Cointelegraph especially, some public media, and quietness for some time on major Telegram channels with positive news. Good, we can go for a positive scenario. And the setup is like this. It's not ideal. Yeah. I must say I've seen much better ones. This kind of 5 up and so extended flat as a correction, it's not ideal one. But in crypto, it's often not ideal one, especially beginning of growth. Yeah. So this is a summary. This is a set of Elliot ways which I did promise, and I like to keep promises. And if anything changes, I might say it on next weekly call. Okay, we have update. We had to change it, but at the moment, this is what we're working with. Okay, and with this, I can conclude my intensive, relatively short, less than 10 minutes speech.
Yeah, thank you, Maxim. It's always great to see how the Elliot waves and 5-stage cycles kind of weigh into what Santiment's metrics are showing. So appreciate you showing that off.
Yeah, just also to say that Elliot phase, it's not a ultimate prediction tool. It's a mean, it's a language. How analytics, in my opinion, should talk with each other. Because if we are human, if we don't have language to communicate, or we talk different languages, imagine I don't speak English, or you don't speak whatever language I can speak. It's a limited amount of information we can exchange now. Elliot waves, or these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ABC. Just a language. We try to explain things or our analysis, which can be done in many different ways. Quite a few times, me or other people in our group, on our Discord, we just use very different. We can use as simple as a support line, or we can use just 1 or 2 news. Spread it on 1 or 2 narratives spread it in the market, but then we will extrapolate it to the language which is now on the screen. So we say, okay, if this news very good now coming and everyone expecting growth, it might be the end of the thieves. Yeah, so we expect a turnaround. This kind of things. So I do share criticism to Elliot waves. It's use it only. First, it's difficult. It takes you a long time. It takes you a short time to understand, but it takes you a very long time to simplify it, not to overuse it. And in the market analysis, it's always the case. We do it too complex, trying to reduce the risk. Risk is there. There is no means you can reduce it with complex analysis tool. As simple as possible. You just need to see where the risk is. And so it takes not so long time to understand the basics of Elliot waves, but it takes very long time to simplify it and use just a minimum but needed amount of patterns of way of talking in this language, so that you can communicate the ideas. So, and it's not to say that Santiment is Elliot waves company, no, but we use it language. I like it. It's kind of expressive enough, yeah, and there are enough people who can understand it. If you add to it just a trend like line like support resistance, it's basically the you need. The rest is anyway taking decisions, understanding the risk, and take responsibility on decisions you make. And this discipline is much more important than whatever analysis you use. Good. Now really, I think enough for today.
Yeah, thank you, Max. Really appreciate you sharing all of that. And obviously, any individual metric we show, it's kind of a supplement to everything else. And the more information you can gather at any given time, which is what we do on this call, we combine everything together, the better analysis you can make. You know, are there 8 things that look bullish and 4 that look bearish? Are there 16 that look bearish, but only 1 that looks bullish, right? It's always a combination in between.
Right. It's very rare. It's straightforward. And when it's so straightforward that everyone thinks the same, that gets in danger. Most of the time.
Yeah.
Assessing the risk, yeah. And I see the risk from actually picture alone, not in crypto. When you see how close we get to 24,000 market, I mean, talking about Bitcoin, probably would like to break it down just to liquidate longs and scare everyone because we're not scared yet. Or we'll go up now and then everyone gets relaxed and then go down. But this 24 like a magnet, yeah, and we keep trying to break it. And these basic things, you don't even need to do analysis, you just know how typically crypto market works.
Right. Yeah, well said, Max. So, I mean, one thing we can look at now is some of the on-chain stuff that's going on, beginning with, trading volume here, which did get a spike as you'd expect from the Grayscale news, but quickly has kind of fallen back. And we haven't really seen anything near what we saw way back in mid-March when prices really started to skyrocket. So part of the reason that the rallies don't go as long as we maybe hope is there just isn't enough fuel going into it. This spike, albeit a decent one, was not nearly what we saw 6 months back. And you really need to see climbing trading volume over time to allow the trend to continue going in that direction. And time again, at least throughout the past year and a half or so, any rallies have just kind of petered out quickly from the lack of enthusiasm going into them. There's FOMO from small traders who don't make big dents in the trading volume, but overall, you know, the big powers that be, they're not putting as much into these mini rallies as the small traders are hoping to see. In transaction volume, you can see how it's declining over time. It really kind of peaked in the initial phases of the ETF announcements a couple of months ago and has kind of fallen ever since. Looking at daily active addresses, yeah, we did see a big spike. You know, it went over 1 million unique BTC addresses for the first time in about 2 weeks, and then it quickly fell back down. Circulation still looking pretty iffy. Not a lot of unique tokens moving from address to address on a daily basis right now. So utility-wise, not much to be excited about, and this probably does need to improve in order to justify a big rally that a lot of people are hoping for right now. Meanwhile, MVRV, you can see how the 30-day MVRV is in the negative once again at about negative 4.1%. 365, it's at plus 5.4% right now. So it's starting to get pretty close to both the short and long-term average traders being in the negative territory, which would be a great indication that prices can start to lift up. That being said, as we mentioned, it isn't just based on average trading returns. We need to see more utility too, and we need to see whales involved, which we'll get to in a moment. Funding rates, we're kind of seeing a mixed bag. On Binance, I believe, yeah, Binance, we are seeing some big shorts. You can see this one that happened right at the top of that mini Grayscale rally from the other day before falling off, but it's kind of just neutral. There's a decent amount of longs and a decent amount of shorts right now. We're not seeing anything near like this in May or this in March, which would indicate we're getting close to a bottom, and there could be some short liquidations that can really fuel a rally. And as I mentioned, whales, we didn't see much impact at all. So this is part of the problem. Like, we may have seen a bunch of FOMO and people on social media getting excited about Grayscale, but the big players, they were not really buying it. Maybe they already knew, maybe they don't think it's even that big of a deal that Grayscale won this lawsuit. But a plus 7% rally in a day isn't suddenly going to make whales just wake up unless it's for a very, very specific reason that we saw that rally in the first place. And this wasn't enough of a reason, according to the numbers. You can especially see the $1 million plus numbers. Like, we had this one tiny, if you even want to call it a spike, but look how much it's dropped off since the mid part of the summer. It's just, you know, fallen off a cliff here, the yellow bars in particular. So that's concerning. It's not the end of the world if whales are making less transactions. What matters more, in my opinion, is what they're actually doing with the overall supply of Bitcoin. And that's where we can add in these 3 lines. We'll throw in the price really quick. And we can see that it's kind of going in different directions. The sharks are definitely climbing. They've been moving up ever since the beginning of the month, about almost 4 weeks ago now. And they've gone from holding they've added about 0.1% of the supply to their stacks. That's pretty significant. Meanwhile, the next tier up, the 100 to 1,000, the smaller whales, they've been going down. And then the gold line here, this is the largest, 1,000 to 10,000. No problem, Maxim. Take care. Have a great rest of your afternoon over there. And then the gold ones, I mean, we can see it's kind of gone up and down. There definitely was this accumulation, right? So we talked about that, you know, one day before the announcement accumulation that was going on. It happened in these large whale addresses where they definitely added on, looks like about 0.08% of the supply to their stacks. And that was significant and maybe helped even bolster the prices up a little further. But right now, it doesn't look like the sharks and whales are doing anything hugely significant. Just going to check if there's anything else. I'll also take a look at the supply and exchanges as it's starting to show a bit of a turnaround. This is, believe it or not, the biggest growth over the past week in coins returning to exchanges since March, when we saw that big rally and people were moving their coins to exchanges to sell at this much higher price. So not the biggest deal in the world. Ideally, though, we don't want to see supply and exchanges going up. We want it to stay flat or even continue moving down, as we've seen for most of the year. Okay, let me look at another whale chart here too to give you some more context. So if we look at the 10 to 10,000 line again, all combined, you can see there had been some liftoff here with this green line, but after this rally, pretty much just a day after, you know, they started accumulating. Now they're starting to drop back down again. Highlighting this, you know, it's been pretty topsy-turvy. We're not in this super danger zone of any type in terms of like the range in which the sharks and whales have held. But they've definitely dropped off since the early part of the summer. And they're still above where they were when they were at their low point, and they took a bunch of profit here in mid-April. So we're in the middle right now, but at least on the short term, they accumulated for most of August and have just in the last couple of days started to take some profit. And then Tether, right? We have to look at what the whales and sharks are doing in terms of stable coins. Tether is starting to go up again, so there's a slight amount of increased buying power. USDC is moving down now, as it has for most of August, but obviously the trend going back to 6 months ago is still significantly up, and these sharks and whales have a lot more of USD coin than they did back then. Binance USD, look at how much this coin has been accumulated. Yeah, just in the past few days, it has been dropped a little bit. Probably had to do with the SEC outcome, where, you know, some of the sharks and whales were exchanging BUSD in particular for Bitcoin, but still very high compared to where it was back in March. Same with DAI. Look at how much DAI has continued to grow. This stable coin is often associated with Ethereum and ETH-based coins, so that's positive if you're watching the #2 market cap asset. And then even True USD is seeing this big jump in supply held right now. USDP not so much, but yeah, I'd say, you know, Tether is the most important, and they're at least starting to show some signs of accumulation again, but they have a ways to go. And then USDC, BUSD, and DAI, they all still look good on the long-term 6-month scale. In terms of Bitcoin's social dominance, you can see if I just change this to a day to make it a little less noisy. We did see the highest ratio of Bitcoin discussions during the Grayscale announcement in about a month and a half. So that was significant, and it did bring some attention back to the #1 market cap asset, which is a good thing for crypto. But it's dropped back down and is really back in a neutral spot now. So if it starts to get negative, be a little careful, because that's a sign of greed, and people may be opening their eyes more toward altcoins and more speculative assets. And that often is a signal of a top coming. All right, and we touched on funding rate. take a quick look at the MVRV model. It's probably going to do a refresh, but before it does, I see Magic Token, Linear, Serum as three of the assets with the most opportunity right now due to the lack of positive returns for most traders right now. So average traders are way underwater for most assets at this moment, and that's causing mostly underbought or semi-underbought signals to be all over the place for a lot of these altcoins. So yeah, there is good justification that getting into an altcoin right now could be a positive investment for you. But we still need to be sure that Bitcoin is going to be stable, because if Bitcoin starts to free fall a little bit more to 25K or below, altcoins are certainly going to be flushed even more than they already have been. So in other words, yeah, you could potentially catch a falling knife right now, which is often a term for charts dropping off a cliff, but you risk really seeing further damage right now due to the lack of stability in the markets and the declines that have been going on for a couple months now throughout crypto. Yeah, and then overall exchange funding rates, pretty neutral. We're seeing a little bit of shorting going on for some of these assets. Axie Infinity is up there, as it often is. That's a very commonly shorted asset. Cosmos, Compound, Thorchain, Theta, Sandbox, Synthetics, and Stellar, just to name a few. Solana as well. So these are assets where if you bought into them now, you'd be buying into a lot of shorts going on, which would mean you'd have the advantage of prices shooting up a little quicker than others due to potential liquidations if price rises were to occur. All right, looking at a few of the daily trends right now. Right now, the number one trending or topic is Revo, and Revo is an asset that has been discussed a lot on Telegram as of late. It looks just to be like a trading pair that's getting a lot of attention. I'm curious. I'm going to look up Revo really quick just to see how its price is doing at the moment. Revomon or Revomon is its name. Sorry if I have that pronunciation wrong. No, I mean it's low and it doesn't really be showing any signs of spiking. So for whatever reason on Telegram, it is getting a lot of attention right now. And then we see words like delays going on due to the SEC's decision to needing more time to make any decision on the applications from other ETFs like Wisdom Tree, Invesco, Valkyrie. So these are part of the reason that market caps are kind of flat / bleeding a bit. People are the same optimism that was there a few days ago. It's now being replaced by skepticism due to the delays going on with the SEC's decision making on all of these ETFs. We're voting related to governance polls. UID, that's also related to Revo. Of course, you see ETF here, which has been trending all week long due to all of the interest in what the verdict is going to be on all of these ETFs. So yeah, definitely check out some of our social trends and see what the latest keywords are that are popping up here. They could be really advantageous to take tabs on and know what is actually driving the markets at any given time. All right, at this point, if there are any good questions related to some assets, I'd be happy to look through a few and see if we can help some of our viewers.
No asset requests yet.
Not a problem. I'll look at one that I think is drawing some attention right now, and that's Chainlink. So as I mentioned, Chainlink has had a slight uptick over the past 12 hours or so. It may not look like much, but it did jump back over $6 and is now just slightly below it once again. Let's look through some of its on-chain indicators first, beginning with utility. We can see the transaction volume and trading volume is staying rather low right now, so not much to get too excited about there. Same with daily active addresses and circulation. The amount of unique addresses and unique tokens that are actually interacting on the network is pretty minimal at the moment. But this is a good sign here. So we have both the short-term, short/midterm, I should say, for 30-day, and long-term for 365. They're both well into the negatives right now. So the average returns, both being this low, this is something that's commonly associated with bottoms. It's not in extreme territory yet, but comparing to the past 6 months, we're definitely within earshot of the same setup that we saw back on June 10th or so, when prices really bottomed out, and I think it nearly got below $5 right there. So yeah, both being negative right now indicates a lot of trader pain and potentially some opportunities to come in. Also, take a look at all these shorts going on. Chainlink last saw this level of shorting back in mid-June, and of course that was a great time to get in. You'd be in at a bottom if you were betting against these shorts, which is often a viable strategy. So that's good to see, and it's on Binance right now, the largest exchange in the world. So the perpetual contract funding rate being so low is definitely a signal that there could be a mini breakout for Chainlink. Whale transactions, fairly low right now, maybe a bit of a pickup in the last few days. Let's see, so it's valued at about $6 or so, give or take right now. So let's take a look at the 100K all the way up to, let's just do these two tiers, 100K to 10 million. And yeah, look at this. So quite a bit of accumulation going on for Chainlink at the moment. And I'll add price to overlay on top of it. Let's try one more time. Here we go. So check that out. Ever since mid-June, when the ETF announcements were first taking off, we've seen massive accumulation from the 1 million to 10 million crowd, going from 15.33% of the supply owned to 16.91 now. That's a big jump. And we also see the 100K to a million similarly went from 10.3% all the way up to 11.9%. So yeah, collectively, the key tiers for Chainlink have been accumulating pretty heavily. I'd call this a very good sign. So when there is some stability in the markets and Bitcoin maybe starts to climb back toward 30K again, Chainlink looks like a candidate to really make up some ground in a hurry based on the fact that big key stakeholders have been putting a lot into Link as of late. And then we mentioned the supply and exchanges as a key signal. We'll go back 3 years, just like we did on the tweet. So take a look at this. Pretty much every time we see the supply and exchanges dip like this, we see a rise over the past 3 years. Way back in December 2020, it goes way down below 16%. Price takes off. Goes back down again, below 16%. Price takes off. Here it stays pretty high, and what do you know? The price goes way down, along with the rest of crypto, mind you. And then we do see it go down below 16% again here. Prices have a mild rise. Again, below 16%, better rise. And then just lately, it's gone back down once again. So that's where we will find out whether we start to see a bit of a rise to follow the familiar pattern. This does not work for every asset. It's certainly not a 100% certainty type of indicator, but generally speaking, less coins on exchanges is a good sign that prices can grow due to the lack of coins that are being sold off at any given time. And even social dominance, look at how the percentage of discussion has kind of started to lift up over the past couple of months here, going back to late June. You know, not really a huge spike or anything, but it's like a weird new normal now where social dominance for Chainlink is consistently above 1% of all the discussions among the top 100 market cap assets, whereas before we were barely seeing half a percentage. So Chainlink is on a lot of people's radars. I'd say this is overall a good sign for sure that it's getting a little more mainstream attention, and it already was getting some good mainstream attention going back the last couple of years. Most of you know about the Link Marines and just how vocal they are about their asset. And then, of course, look at development activity for Chainlink too. Definitely being worked on more and more as time goes on. Just going back 3 years where it was getting 40 to 50 GitHub submissions per day that were notable. Now it's more like 300 to 400, sometimes 450. That's very significant and does indicate, regardless of what you believe about Link, that it has a good coding team that is dedicated to improving and innovating the project. So yeah, that's just a little recap about Chainlink, and I hope that's helpful for those of you who may be monitoring that asset. I think it's okay that we conclude here, but I want to thank you all, as always, for jumping on and talking markets with us. Keep your requests going. I know we're talking a little more on Discord than we do on our live YouTube streams as of late, but we love to get into projects live while you watch here and you know, answer questions as they arise. So please feel free to shoot them our way as we get into next week. And yeah, in the meantime, stay safe. And let's hope that we start to see a good turnaround in the crypto markets this final third of 2023. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.